Well, the second episode of Game of Wool was on last night, and it is probably as controversial as the first episode. I wasn't sure I was going to do another reaction video to the Game of Wool, but I decided to do it because last week's episode was incredibly popular. More about that in a minute. And also, there's been a lot of controversy all week about some of the stuff that happened in episode 1. And more today about episode 2. So I thought we'd chat about it. There are some important things I want to bring up, some criticism of the term feral being used for last week's challenge, and also some stuff to do with the kits that are being sold and the designers, i.e. the knitters, being compensated. So I thought we'd have a chat about that, plus my views on episode 2. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, my name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns. I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through my website, YarnAddict.co.uk. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. If you watched last week's video that I did on Game of Wool episode 1, you will notice I'm now in a different location. I'm back home in my office and getting back into the swing of things. It's a really busy week this week. I'm away later this week at Black Sheep Wools to teach workshops. My workshops for January, March and April at Black Sheep Wools are now up. I'll put the link in the description box below. January workshops I think are fully booked, but I'm doing other workshops in March and April. I'm doing beaded lace knitting and brioche improvers in March. So brioche improvers, if you've done any brioche knitting, like basic 2-color brioche, then you're ready for brioche improvers. And then in April, at the end of April, I'm doing filet crochet, which is a really interesting crochet technique. Have I got a filet swatché? Yes, I do. So it's kind of a way of creating pictures in your crochet. It's an old technique, but I've designed a scarf to show how you can use it in a more modern way. I guess it was traditionally used for tablecloths, curtains, that kind of thing, but you can also create modern designs with it. So filet crochet on 24th of April and 25th of April, Orenburg lace knitting. So we'll be knitting a little mini Orenburg lace shawl. Orenburg shawls are traditional lace shawls from Russia. So I hope you will check those out. They're on my website now, and I'll put them in the description below as well. Contact Black Sheep Wools to book. And I'm also teaching a couple of workshops in Devon in the next few weeks. So I'm teaching a Brixham sewing box on 7th of December, finishing techniques, and the week before, on the 30th of November, I'm teaching feral colorwork clutch, which is basically this one, teaching that on the 30th of November. So you'll learn feral knitting and how to knit the colorwork clutch. And then the 9th of December, I'm at Spinny Yarn in Bobby Tracy in Devon, teaching my hot water bottle stranded colorwork. I'll pop a picture up on the screen. So that is what's happening this year. And also, one quick thing I want to talk about before we start is my Harrogate Knit and Stitch workshops. I'm teaching at Harrogate Knit and Stitch Show next week. And my workshops, there are still some spaces left on some of them. So I'm teaching things like a Mobius cowl. So you learn the Mobius cast on, which is really interesting. And then you can knit a Mobius cowl. Continental knitting, mitred squares, knitting in the round, and seaming knitted fabric, and mosaic colorwork. So quite interesting workshops. If you're interested in that, they're either 1 or 2 hour long. The Mobius one is 2 hour. I think all the others are 1 hour long. But I'll link that below as well. If you click on the advanced filter and scroll down till you see my name, you will find my workshops a lot quicker. Also, I'm planning to release this pattern this week. I feel a little bit cautious talking about it before I released it, in case I don't get time, because I've got a very busy week. But I'm planning to release this on Tuesday or Wednesday, because I'm away Thursday, Friday and Saturday for Black Sheep Wool workshops. So this is my pad sew tote. This one I knitted last December. Yes, it's taken me a long time to get this out. And the colours are from the Discreet Unicorn Yarn Advent from last year. And I only used a few grams, like 3 grams or something of each colour. It's DK yarn, and the black is Yatagara Merino cotton, which I sell in my online shop. I also did another version of it in Yatagara Merino cotton, using 3 colours, so dark grey and then a green and a pink. You can use as many colours as you want. You can use only 2 colours, it's up to you. I need to reattach these handles again because they're a little bit wonky, or it may just be the way it's been stored. But I have the yarn on my website. I also have a selection of these handles in a variety of colours, and I will try and get those up on my website this week. I've been meaning to do it since Yarndale in September. I just haven't gotten around to it, so I'm going to try and do it this week. But the pattern comes with 2 options, so the smaller version and the larger version. So if I compare them, they're the same height, but the larger version is, larger version is wider. So the pattern is going to be out on Tuesday or Wednesday this week. So now I've said it here, I've got to do it. So right, let's get back to Game of Wool. Thank you if you watched last week's video. It absolutely blew me away how many people have watched it. I haven't looked at what the latest stats are, but it's probably my most watched video in one single week. It's not the most watched video on my channel, but in a single week. Loads of new subscribers over the last week as well. So if you're new here, thank you. I really appreciate it. And if you're watching but you haven't subscribed yet, do hit subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. And you can unsubscribe at any time, but it means you'll see my videos in your feed every week. I release videos on Tuesday and Thursday. Normally I do a podcast episode on Thursday where I chat about what I'm knitting and yarn and things I bought. And then on Tuesday, I release some kind of other video. I think I said podcast is on Thursday. The podcast is on Friday. Used to be on Thursday, it's now on Friday. And then Tuesday, I released some other kind of video, chatting about a topic that knitters and crocheters care about, or tutorial, or talking about Game of Wool. So I hope you enjoyed it last week, and I hope you'll stick around. If you didn't watch last week's video, I will link it below. Do go and check it out. So when I went online last week after watching it, especially on Threads, I seem to see more about this on Threads than the other social media apps. But on Threads, virtually every post I saw was about Game of Wool. And I think the problem is that I don't think this show is aimed at us dedicated knitters. If you're watching this video, I assume you're a fairly dedicated knitter. And I was with a group of knitters on Saturday. I was teaching a workshop. They were not impressed with Game of Wool, the first episode. I know the people who were there. This was at the Knitting Hotel. I know the group that was there last weekend for the first episode weren't impressed. And the group that was there with me on Saturday, they're there for like a weekend retreat. So I was teaching them on Saturday and they were not impressed. And they were looking forward to watching it as a group on Sunday. And the problem is, I don't think it's aimed at us dedicated, obsessed knitters. Those of us who knit every day, who knit all year round, who go to knitting shows, who go on knitting retreats, who buy indie-dyed yarn. I don't think we are the target audience for this show, because I think if we were, it wouldn't be on Channel 4 in prime time on a Sunday evening. So I think the target audience are people who watch things like the Bake Off, Great British Sewing Bee, the Pottery Throwdown, which I've never watched, but I've heard bits about it. I think the people that watch those kind of shows are the target audience for this show. People can watch the Bake Off and not actually do any baking. I don't watch Bake Off regularly. I see bits of it occasionally. But I know people who watch it who don't do any baking, but they enjoy watching it. So I think that's the target audience for this show as well. It's the people who like that kind of shows, but aren't actually watching it. A lot of people are up in arms about the competition element, because obviously if you knit and crochet, you know it's not quick. It takes time, and depending on how you knit, the techniques used, how experienced you are, the style of knitting you use, all that kind of stuff can make it slower or faster. But it's a lot of people are unhappy about the competition element, but that's the kind of show it is. So they've got to do that in some way. And that's why I was surprised when they brought this out. I know there was a similar show in Denmark. I've seen bits of it on YouTube a few years ago. I can't remember the format because I don't think I watched all of it. I can understand some Danish because it's very similar to Norwegian. Britain is very similar to Norwegian spoken, it's a bit different, and I struggle a bit with spoken Danish now. But I can watch it and understand bits of it. But I'd watched maybe 1 or 2 episodes of it, but apparently the format of that was a bit different. But I can't remember. It was a while since I watched it. So, bit mixed reaction online. A lot of people feel like me that having knitting on primetime television on Sunday evening on Channel 4, main channel here in the UK, is great and good publicity for knitting. And some people didn't like it because of the fact that you had to knit a Fair Isle tank top in 12 hours on chunky yarn and chunky needles. So let's talk about the Fair Isle last week. So there's been a lot of controversy about it. I understand somebody told me on Saturday that a Scottish MSP, so member of the Scottish Parliament, has made a formal complaint to Channel 4 about it. There was knitters groups or Shetland knitters groups on the Shetlands who complained about it because of the term they used, Fair Isle. When I first started to teach knitting, I would use Fair Isle. So my Fair Isle and Steeking workshop, I would call it Fair Isle and Steeking, because if I said Fair Isle, people knew what I was talking about. They knew that it was stranded colour work. We used 2 colours in a row, and people knew what that meant. After a while, I started being aware of the fact that some people were criticizing those of us who use Fair Isle for a generic stranded colour work. And as the stranded colour work that I use the most is more Scandinavian inspired stranded colour work, because I'm Norwegian, so I take more inspiration from Norwegian stranded colour work than Fair Isle and proper Fair Isle. So I changed it, so now I call it stranded colour work, and my online course is called Scandinavian Stranded Colour Work and Steeking, because that is more what I'm inspired by and what I teach. The techniques in how you knit it, how you knit with 2 colours at the same time, and how you handle your floats and all that kind of stuff is basically the same. It doesn't matter if it's stranded colour work, if it's Swedish bullhus knitting, if it's Fair Isle, if it's some other stranded colour work technique. Basic technique in how you handle 2 colours is the same, but there are some things that are specific to Fair Isle that makes it Fair Isle knitting. And I may do a separate video talking about this. I'm not going to talk about it more here, but a lot of people were unhappy because the knitters were allowed to choose their own motifs, and they were supposed to choose motifs that represented them or their life in some way. Some of those motifs, obviously not traditional Fair Isle motifs, or they didn't fit into the rules, for lack of another word, of Fair Isle knitting. So I appreciate that. And obviously there was a lot of controversy about the knitter who left last week, Gordon, because he used steeking technique. He has done 2 videos, I think, now on YouTube. If I remember, I'll link his channel below, but it's Man Knitted in Scotland, I think. I watched the first one. I haven't watched the second one yet, but he basically talks about his design, why he chose the techniques he did, some background that didn't come across on the show, the fact that the techniques he used were traditional Fair Isle techniques. So it's worth going and watching that if you're interested in that topic. I haven't watched his second video, so I don't know what that's about, but I saw it come up on my YouTube over the weekend. But he used steeking, and it came across on the show as if his steeking is why his design didn't work. I don't think it was. I think he just ran out of time. I think he said in the video that he had to rip back a bit. He also tried to add a pocket, which I'm not quite sure why he would add a pocket, because they weren't asked to add a pocket, and it added extra complexity and knitting time to a time-sensitive task. But do go and check that out. Right, so let's go to this week's show and talk about it. So the first challenge, their solo challenge, was dog coat, to knit or crochet a dog coat. They had to use both techniques, and they were allowed to choose whatever yarn they wanted and choose their own design. I didn't get the impression they'd been able to design this ahead, but maybe they did. I'm not sure. They had a model of a dog in the studio, and I got the impression that was something that Holger had made, but maybe I got that wrong. They had 2 real Italian greyhounds come in to model it, and they all looked very cute. I don't particularly like novelty items. I know dog coats are popular, lots of people knit them. A friend of mine wants to knit them for her little dogs because she's struggling to get dog coats that are small enough for them. And she asked me if I could help her design some or modify a pattern to make it smaller because it was too big for her dogs. And I said, I can do, but I won't have time for a while because this autumn has just been crazy. I also know once I've done it that she's not going to get around to knitting it for a very long time. So I'm not rushing it, but I am thinking about knitting a dog coat for my little dog. Sunny 1 minute and cloudy the next. So when it's sunny, I have to close my curtain, and when it's cloudy, I have to open it. So I do apologize about the light. So they were making these dog coats. They had to make dog coats that fitted the dogs and were easy to take on and off. They had to be functional, in other words, and they also had to make a headpiece. I didn't understand the headpiece. Do any dogs like wearing headpieces? I don't particularly like dressing up dogs. Our dog, Alfie, is a miniature pinscher, and he has a very short coat, and he does get cold in the winter. He's literally standing there. He'll lift one foot up, and he's standing and shake like mad if it's cold outside. And he doesn't like bad weather. So he does wear a coat, but it's a waterproof, fleecy coat to keep him warm and dry. Our previous dogs had never had coats. We did have a dog in Norway once, which had he was a Keys hound, and he had a really long coat, really thick, long coat, and he did used to have to wear booties on his feet in the winter because the snow would stick to his paws and clump up and make his paws really sore. So we had to train him to wear booties in the winter at times, and he did not like it. So I'm not used to dressing up dogs. Girls bought our dog a Christmas sweater a couple of years ago, and we put it on him and take a picture every Christmas day. But I don't buy funny outfits for my dogs because I don't know, I just think they're a bit silly and I don't see the point in it. So I don't normally dress up my dog. So I thought the headpieces were silly. What dog wants to wear something on their head anyway? The yarn choices were questionable. There was one made completely in like the tinsel yarn, the sparkly tinsel that looks like Christmas tinsel. That was just awful. I did not like that at all. Some of the coats were better than others. I think it was Stephanie who made the Chelsea pensioner inspired coat, but she was criticised for sewing up techniques. I think it was Meadow who was criticised for her twisted stitches. There were some twisted stitches in one of the sofa covers last week, so I'm not sure that was so. There are two women who say they're mainly crocheters. But it's called, they're trying to find Britain's best knitter, so I'm not sure why you would apply for it if you're not an experienced knitter. Although Meadow is very young, and I don't really want to criticise her because she did get very upset later on in the second challenge, so I'm a bit wary of criticising her, but I think she was criticised for twisted stitches. They modelled all the coats on the dogs, they all fitted. Some of them looked great, some of them looked awful. My favourite one was, I think it was Simon's dog sweater. I thought I'd written it down, but I haven't. Yes, I have. Best dog coats I thought was Simon. It was a bit more understated and normal looking, which I liked. And I also liked Holger's coat, although I can't remember what I looked like now, but I did at the time. I've written down that I liked it, probably because they were the most functional ones. Anyway, let's move on to the team challenge, which was 80s sweaters. They had to use mohair, and that was the team challenge. So there were 3 in each team, so 3 teams of 3. They were given a vintage 80s pattern. I'm not sure about calling 80s vintage, as that was my teenage years, but fair enough. So they were given an 80s pattern that they could modify, and they had to use intarsia techniques. Now, intarsia is challenging if you haven't done it before, and some of the knitters hadn't done that before, and it's also challenging to do it in mohair, I think. If you're doing it at a looser tension, it's very difficult because it looks quite messy. It's not too difficult to make straight lines in intarsia, but curved lines are a bit different. Because a knit stitch is not square, it's slightly taller than it's wide. So if you draw it out on graph paper, which I noticed they did, it's not going to look to scale. So there was one a group that did a balloon sweater, which I thought looked great. I actually really liked the balloon sweater, but some of the balloon curves weren't like even, but it's very difficult to achieve that with knitting anyway. And then there was one that was, oh yes, it was the music one. It had like a guitar on the front, which was a very challenging thing. And I think it was Meadow who knitted that piece. And she has said that she's not an experienced knitter. So I thought it was brave on her for taking on that piece, because that was very challenging. Even as an experienced knitter, that's a challenging piece to knit, especially in just 10 hours. And she at one point got very, very upset. They decided they didn't have time to knit both sleeves, so they decided they would do like an off-the-shoulder piece, so diagonally across from the underarm to the neck, or I guess from the underarm to the other neck. But different person was knitting the front and the back, and they obviously didn't coordinate, because one of them cut off the right shoulder and the other one cut off the left shoulder, so they didn't get the shaping so that it worked on the same shoulder, so they had to fudge it a bit, and that didn't make it look great. And then they also had a sleeve. I would say the most experienced knitter in that group was probably Stephanie, and she did the sleeves, or the one sleeve they did. I think she did some of the bit on the front as well, because Meadow got very, very upset when she realized that they had made a mistake with the off the shoulder look shaping, and she ran outside. And I thought the way Tom Daly handled it, he talked to her about and compared it to competing in his diving competitions. I thought he handled it really well, and she joined the group again. But I did feel sorry for her. She looks, I think she said she's about to go to university or something, so she's presumably quite young. Yeah, I felt sorry for her. It's not nice to see anyone upset, but also it's that kind of show, so. But the sweaters all look great up to a point. I've just gone on Instagram, and I've seen that Holger, who's General Hog Buffer on Instagram, has put up a thing for his dog sweater. And so I guess they did have a chance to plan it beforehand, because he's just put this up about his dog sweater. That was his inspiration, and sketches and things. And I did like his dog sweater. I thought that was very interesting. Oh, that's what his dog sweater looked like. It was very well turned out. I'm not sure about the headpiece, but it was very well knitted, very well done. My favourite of the three sweaters was Tracy, Holger, and Lydia. They did a checkerboard sweater. It was, let's see if I can find a picture of it here. The kit is being sold by Wool and the Gang, and it is, hang on. But you can see that that's what it looks like. That's not what the version on the program looked like, but that's the final pattern. So that sweater had two colors diagonally across, and then there was like a checkerboard pattern in between. And I really liked that. It looked very 80s. It looked very nice. They decided to do it with one long sleeve and one short sleeve because of time. And it was interesting because Holger definitely likes a bit more toned down, more classic style, I would guess. And Tracy is a bit more, she said she likes embellishment. She likes brighter colors, I think, a bit more going on in her knitting, a bit more embellishment. And she wanted to add embellishments, and he didn't. The actual sweater they did for the show actually had a big bow on one shoulder, which I really liked. They were supposed to do one long sleeve and one short sleeve. Did they ditch the short sleeve? I can't remember now. But they had a big bow on one shoulder, which I really, really liked. But there was a little bit of disagreement between Holger and Tracy, and Lydia in the middle trying to mediate. So that was quite interesting to watch as well. One of the criticisms I also read last week was that Rowan offered kits for the tank tops that they made. So presumably the finished results were sent to Rowan. Their design team actually used that as inspiration to write up a pattern for a fully finished, bit more kind of fine-tuned, I guess, sample. And they put out kits for the tank tops last week using Rowan big wool, which is obviously what they were using on the show. Now, a Yarn Story, which is a yarn shop in Bath, I saw that she asked Rowan on social media if the designers were compensated for these kits, and they said no because their contract was with Channel 4. So this week, Wool and the Gang has released a kit for the checkerboard sweater. I haven't seen kits for the other ones yet, so I don't know if they're doing that. So I'm assuming the yarn they were using was Wool and the Gang. And again, they were asked whether designers or the knitters are compensated, and they said their contract is with Channel 4. So it's clear that Channel 4, in their contract that they signed with the participants of the show, have put in a clause that anything they design as part of the show is Channel 4's property, and they have then done collaborations with Sofa Rowan and Wool and the Gang to create kits for these designs. And as a designer, I have a major problem with that. I don't know whether the participants are being paid to be on the show. I guess it'll be good publicity. I think Meadows said that after university, she's hoping to go into knit design. Holger and Simon already have quite big social media followings. Some of the others have fewer now, but they'll probably get more. So if they decide to do something in the knitting world in the future, this might help them with that. Another thing I noticed is that Holger has already got quite a few patterns published on Ravelry. He's designed patterns, not just self-published patterns, but it looks like he's designed patterns for publications. And Lydia, I think, is an indie dyer, or was an indie dyer. She's called Weku Yarns on Instagram. And I don't know about the others, but I've been told that a few of them have done designs, have designs published. I assumed that you had to be an amateur to sign up. I didn't look at the sign-up conditions because I just assumed you'd have to be an amateur, and I'm not. I've been working in this industry for 20 years now, so I can't call myself an amateur. But it looks like you maybe not. I did look to see if the information for the next series was up, because I thought I saw something about it, but I couldn't find it. So I don't know whether we'll get another series or not, but hopefully we will. But yeah, so I'm disappointed that they're not compensating the knitters for the kits. I think they should get a cut of the kits that are created with their designs, but I don't know if they were paid for this program and how much they were paid. And I also don't know what was in their contract. I'm assuming they knew that when they signed the contract, and if they happily signed the contract and that was the conditions, then, fine. That would be another reason why I wouldn't want to take part personally. So they have a big knitter of the week. I'm not sure why it has to be big knitter of the week. Why it can't just be knitter of the week? And also a lot of people had an issue with the fact that they're using knitting and crochet, but they're calling it Game of Wool Britain's Best Knitter, and they're calling it Knitter of the Week. But this week they had to use crochet in their dog coat as well as knitting. So I don't know why they are sticking with the term knitting. A lot of general public can't tell the difference between knitting and crochet, and as knitters and probably crocheters as well, if we see somebody who's crocheting and some newspaper is doing an article on knitting and they include a picture of someone crocheting and they call it knitting, we get very irate about that, and vice versa. So I don't know why I don't know why they call it big knitter of the week, why they can't just call it knitter of the week. But anyway, Holger won, and I think I agree with that because I thought his designs were very good. And then Meadow was eliminated. I wasn't surprised. She's been the weekend knitter all the way through. I thought maybe she should have gone last week. There were twisted stitches, which twisted stitches are fine if they're deliberate, but not if they're a mistake. And in stocking stitch, they don't generally look good, I don't think. And she also, her intarsia was a bit holy and gappy, and obviously she had the meltdown, which I felt sorry for her for. She was really embarrassed about that, I would imagine. So she seems very sweet, but she's the one that went home this week, which I think is probably right based on the standard of knitting. Next week they're going to do swimwear, so I guess that's another excuse for the presenter Tom Daly to get his kit off. As he is a diver, he obviously is used to parading around in just swimming trunks, so I'm assuming he will be modelling next week's swimwear challenge. And they're also going to, their group challenge next week will be deck chair. So yeah, the swimwear, I guess, is smaller, so it's easier to make in a limited amount of time. But at the same time, I don't really like all the novelty items. I would prefer there to be proper things that people want to wear. I don't know whether this helps people, encourages more people to get into knitting, or whether it just cements people's stereotypes about knitting. So people think that knitting is silly, as some of the old ladies do, which obviously isn't the case because there are several men there, but that people are thinking knitting is silly and a bit old-fashioned. And I think so far it's probably lived up to that kind of expectations. So that's a bit disappointing. But we have knitting on Channel 4 at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night. That must be a good thing. If you're not in the UK, you might be able to watch it if you download a VPN and download the Channel 4 app on your phone or tablet. I watched it in Norway last week using a VPN set to the UK, and I was able to watch it fine in Norway. This week I was home, so I watched it on my television. But let me know what you thought of this week's episode if you watched it, and last week's episode. Did you like it? Do you not like it? Are you going to carry on watching? A lot of people have very strong views about it and won't be watching it. I made that quite clear. Other people are watching it. I'm watching it because it's knitting on television and I'm interested in it. It'll be interesting to see the long term, whether this will bring more people into knitting and crochet. I'm not sure whether it will necessarily, but it'll be interesting to see. So yeah, let me know what you thought of it. Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Which was your favorite dog sweater and 80s sweater? Which one did you think was going to be knitter of the week, and which one should go? I definitely think that Holger is on track for winning the whole thing. He obviously has very good knitting skills. The problem is he may not be outrageous enough for what they want. He obviously has a more classic design aesthetic, and I think sometimes they're looking for something that is well turned out, but also maybe a little bit more kind of outrageous. I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. Anyway, don't know if I'll do one of these next week or not. We'll see what happens. How busy I am next week, because I'm away 3 days this week, and then I'm away for 4 days next week at the Knit and Stitch Show in Harrogate. So a very busy week again next week. After next week, it calms down a little bit till the end of the year, which I'm very glad for, because this autumn has been very, very busy. Anyway, go and do check out my workshops below. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up. Comment if you have an opinion to share. Thank you for everyone who commented last week. I'm still working my way through them to reply to everyone. I was a bit overwhelmed by how many people watched it, but I'm really, really grateful. And if you're a new subscriber after last week's video, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And if you've been a long-term subscriber, I really appreciate you too. That's why I do this. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment, subscribe if you haven't. Check out my website, sign up to my newsletter, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.